So for those of you guys who are just tuning in now, we are in our little bit of a 15-second dead space to allow for some ads as you guys jump in here with your ice cold beverage and join us for the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show on this Thursday evening. And welcome to the show. My name is Jason. I am the CarrGuy of the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show. This fellow sitting over here beside me tonight is...
Well, I'm Grant Tommy. I am SIXFAN of the operation, or you can find me here on YouTube under the screen name Straight SIXFAN, STR8SIXFAN. But we are super excited to bring in an automotive industry, I'll call him an expert, but the guy below me is, I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Jason Rushforth of Rushforth Wheels and Rushforth Design.
That's pretty cool. So like, this is the first time we've actually, well, I guess it's not the first time we've had a designer specifically, but this is pretty cool to have somebody of this caliber who is making it in the industry with all what I would classify as some of the big boys. Now, I've listened to some of your interviews from other guys, and one of the big things that you had mentioned is that you grew up admiring the likes of the Chip Fooses and maybe the Boyd Coddingtons and all these different types of people who are out there making wheels, and now you're basically living the dream today, doing that for yourself. So before we get too far into our show, Jason, we want to make sure we have an opportunity to welcome some of the people who have joined us in the chat. So Grant, why don't you reach over to the chat there and see who's joined us tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while it's a little light in the chat at the moment, there are at least 10 of you watching, but those commenting so far, so we have GMC Texas, Eford Garage, Herman Lomas, and Streetcar Culture. Welcome everybody to the show. But yeah, Jason, the other Jason, so I'll call you, I'll just call him Car Guy for the sake of not to confuse everybody, but yeah, Jason, it's funny. So in season 3 of the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show, we had on a gentleman you probably know, Ben Hermans, who has, I'm sure there's a lot of similarities and stories here, but I'm guessing there's actually a lot of differences as well. So before Rushforth Wheels happened, of course, there was Rushforth Design. So take us through what it was that, because as an architect, I'm a designer. My dream job is to sketch people's cars for them and their dreams. So how did that become an interest for you, and how did that become really a career for you?
Well, like a lot of guys that do what I do, our electives in high school were probably auto shop and art, and I like drawing cars a lot more than I like working on cars, and that led me to design school. And then I took a lot of crap from teachers for working a car in every assignment, and then got out of school in a recession in '91 and just started drawing cars and working at a friend's paint shop where he specialized in painting race cars. And people don't realize it, but for the last 40 years or so, a good half of the top fuel field was done in Western Washington. And this guy got tapped for the job to paint a good half of those top fuel cars back in the 80s and early 90s. And so this starry-eyed car guy, kid came into his shop just all wide-eyed, and he hired me to do just the most menial work, but then would start having me draw cars for his customers. Anytime anybody came into the shop and wanted a race car painted, but didn't know exactly what they wanted it to look like, he just said, okay, well, you're hiring him before we even buy one can of paint. And that's kind of how it started. And the rest is history. Just kept snowballing, and a lot of little butterfly effect moments and a lot of people along the way that helped me. And, we're just right place, right time, right people. And here I am.
Well, real quick, this is usually where Car Guy would ask a follow-up question. I'm going to cut him off real quick because when you talk about, people have to hire you first to design the car on paper, before a can of paint was gonna get purchased in those early years. As an architect, like, that's a skill that I have to have, that quick sketch. Take us through the process of what's that first, I mean, do you do like a thumbnail sketch? Was it back then, was it more of a thumbnail sketch, or how far did you take it in that very initial like interaction? Just because that skill of being able to turn something around very quickly with a pen and paper is such a valuable skill.
Back then, I spent a lot more time than I do now because I had more time and no money. So I was going all in to try and make a name for myself, and just trying to convey the message and get the look down and get my name out. So I burned a lot of calories. And now I spend a little more time up front with the customer, getting a feel for what they love and hate, and colors that are off the table, and find out what they like, and even have them show me cars they like. But just don't Google the car you're building. That drives me crazy. I'm building a 69 Camaro, so I went ahead and did a Google image search of 69 Camaros and added in the keyword Pro Touring. Then what happened? God. So, Google anything but the car you're building, and, just pick your top favorites and give me that, and then I can run with it. And I'll do thumbnails, rough drafts, with a lot of notes and arrows and, loose drawings, just to convey the theme and the basic concepts. And I'll provide a handful of those to kind of get a feel. And then from there, we kind of hone in on what you like about this, what you dislike about that, and, hopefully combine your favorites into one draft. And it goes back and forth depending on how elaborate the car is and how elaborate the modifications are and what the budget is and how indecisive the customer is. But it's just a process, and it's fun, and we establish a lot of ideas right off the bat, and then decide what we want to keep.
Well, just like in Grant's business with designing a building or an architecture like that, there's lots of input needed from the customer to say, okay, I like this or I don't like that. And obviously, when we're dealing with cars, you get a lot of people, if they're going so far as to get you to design a car on paper, chances are it's not going to be a $25,000 build. It's probably going to be like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. So their input is key. One of the things that I always like to ask people who do the work that you do is, what is it that you see in a car? What is your dream car? How do you design in your mind, or do you already have that car? But what is it that you would like to see in a car as a dream car per se?
Oh man, that is a $1 million question. Perhaps literally $1 million question. And the answer probably has changed every 5 years for my entire life. And God, my answer today might disappoint my fans, but if it was just all in, won the Powerball tomorrow, my first purchase would probably be a Porsche 918.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing to be ashamed about there.
No, I'm not ashamed, but the customers that hire me to decide how to spend $500,000 on a 69 Camaro might be disappointed, but at the same time, maybe they should be looking at cars like that, for inspiration, so they don't make another red 69 Camaro.
Well, as we pick on this,
make a 69 Camaro for you, but let's take influences from the 918, not all the other 69 Camaros that have been done.
Well, and I mean, with German cars, I mean, the engineering is especially of that era. I mean, it's so different and
Yeah.
different in a good way. And it's not to crap on American engineers either or automotive designers, but you know, if we're not learning from each other internationally, we weren't advancing the whole car culture as a whole. But since
Absolutely.
we are picking on the 69 Camaro, and you know, for the fans of Car Guy and SIXFAN, they know that, well, behind Jason is a 79 Cordoba. I have a 78 Ford Fairmont out in my driveway. We've kind of dubbed the OPEC era cars, we like to call them odd bodies or offbeat hot rodding. And I know for a time, Jason, you had one, and we'll extend that outside of the OPEC era to just cars you don't think of first. And so, you know, I know one of the sort of poster childs for showing off your wheels was a 64 Buick Skylark. And, you know, I mean, it's still it's your Chevelle, it's your 64, 65 Chevelle, but
Yeah.
just having the different grill and the badge, like, yeah, we've seen the 69 Camaro 100 times over. Good looking car.
Yeah.
But we love that people are able to stick their neck out from time to time and do something a little bit different. So what did that car mean to you when you had it in whatever that color was, that blue? It was such a good shade color.
Oh, thanks.
Shade of blue.
Yeah, that was a great car, and I really loved that car. And it was that factory, super, super light metallic blue, but it had been resprayed with modern urethane, so it popped a lot harder than, you know, the old single stage paint. And I appreciate the Buick Olds Pontiacs. I'm a GM guy, and I love Chevrolets, but like you said, you know, everybody's got a Chevelle, and when you really take a close look at the BOP cars, the GM spent a lot more money on those cars, and now they're not as popular as Chevelles, so you can pick them up for half the price. But like the grills and the taillight housings on that Buick and the taillight bezels and most of the dashboard insert are castings, not stampings. There's no plastic. It was heavy cast, I guess pot metal, but it was nice. And that Google image was the color of my car. I should have sent in a picture of it in advance, but it can probably come up with a quick Google search as well. But even the side trim was cast. It was really cool, and the bumpers were tucked into the body from the factory, like you would do to a custom car. And you know, I just went hunting. I had a lot of different cars I was looking for, and just was going to buy the nicest, clean, original example I could find. And it turned out to be a Buick that was originally sold about 5 miles from my front door to a person that lived less than a mile from my front door in fall of '63. And it bounced around Western Washington, just 3 owners. I was the 4th owner, and I picked it up on Craigslist, dragged it home, and drove it home. It ran like a top. It only had like 90,000 miles on it originally. And I started blowing it apart with the help of some good friends and some great companies. Hotchkiss and Bear Brakes and BF Goodrich all jumped in to help me. And we blew all the original suspension out, put in the Hotchkiss stuff and my wheels and the Bear Brakes, and it was just a new car overnight. But it still had the 300 in it and the Power Glide. So drove it like that for a year and built an LS and a 6-speed and dropped that in the following year. And it ripped. It was super fast and handled insane. And every time I would go autocross it, as soon as I'd come back from the first lap, you know, all the import guys would dive underneath the car to figure out how I did that.
So, Jason, one of the questions that we always like to ask our guests, now we're talking about the 64 Skylark now, maybe it is and maybe it's not, but we like to ask our guests what their first vehicle was.
My first vehicle was a '77 Nova Rally. that my parents bought brand new in '77 from Dick Balch Chevrolet in Federal Way, Washington. He's a Northwest legend. He was one of those crazy guys with the TV spots where he'd just do crazy stuff. He would dress up. You can find it on YouTube still. He would dress up in a devil costume and run out onto the lot and put a sledgehammer through the windshield of a new Corvette and cackle maniacally. And I've actually had the pleasure of meeting him just recently. He's almost 90, and he's got just amazing stories from the 70s and 80s. He's so cool and such a character and such a Northwest legend. And I love that my parents bought a car from him. And then they hung on to it for me, waited for me to turn 16. And then I was a little bit of a hellraiser, so I had to wait till I was 17 before I got the keys to it, and switched out the 305 to a 350 and put a cam and an intake on it, and bracket raced it a little bit and street raced it a little bit maybe. And I loved that car.
Well, there you go. So you know exactly what Jason and I mean by that odd body, that OPEC era.
Yeah.
My older brother has a 77 Nova, and I'm glad that's how the answer came about, because I was almost certain I remember listening to you on the Muscle Car Place podcast, because I know Kibby had an X body or a 4th gen Nova, but I couldn't remember. I was like, I just don't know how I know that. You know? And so I was like, it's either gonna be a great question or I'm gonna look like an idiot, because yeah, one of our regulars here in the chat, Nova Taz, he has a 77 Nova as well. So where do you slot those cars? I guess, you know, because we exhausted the inventory of the muscle car era, the 64 to 62, where do you think the industry is moving to today? Like, do you think there's a spot for that era of car to kind of get more popular?
Yeah, I hope it keeps building steam, and I'm a little disappointed it doesn't have more steam right now, because like you said, the 64 to 72 stuff is really expensive and really scarce, and people need to kind of just open their minds to different body styles, because there's still some good stuff. The 70s, yeah, the Cordova's got great lines. There's a ton of those cars, and nobody's done anything to them. So just lowering one and putting wheels on it will get instant attention. You know, you don't have to go crazy on it. And there's so much stuff from 73 to say 1990 that has tons of untapped potential. I want to see people do IROCs. I want to see all the G bodies done. You know, Fox bodies are coming back strong, really strong. And I want to see people do the IROCs too. DSC built that incredible IROC they had at SEMA in 2017, the blue one. The thing looks so good. And they're still out there. So I hope that movement keeps building steam.
Yeah, and one of the things that we always, we've had this conversation before on the show, Grant and I, and different guests, is that, like, you take, there's some cars out there that are just such classic cars on their own without even being touched. I'm not saying the Cordoba is one of them, but what I'm saying is that there's so many other cars that, you see one going down in its original condition and you can appreciate every nut and bolt on it just the way it sits. And then you get guys like us who feel that they just got to do something different.
Yeah.
The car is different alone, and I want to segue this into pretty much one of the reasons why we've got you on the show is to kind of showcase your company and your wheels. So we can go and we can take any vehicle, whether you lower it, whether you soup it up, whether you do a fancy paint job or not. If there's only one thing you can ever do to a vehicle that sets it apart from anything else, is a set of wheels. And I want to just give you the opportunity to explain a little bit about your company, I'm going to do a screen share and share your website. We'll go through some of those wheels, but tell us a little bit about how you got to the point of manufacturing and designing wheels, and I'll just let you take over from there.
Well, doing the designs, I was doing more and more high-end cars, and big budgets, and customers wanting to set the cars apart, and one-off wheels is a great way to do it. And I was designing one-off wheels for more and more clients, and then I'd find somebody I knew in the industry to make them. A few different companies would help me, and they'd make a big fat check off the wheels, and I'd make a little check off the wheels, and then there was never another second set ever made of these designs. And I thought, well, hell, I'm leaving money on the table. And I reached out to a few companies like, hey, why don't we produce those wheels that I did for that one car, and just carve me off a slice. And they'd all just go, no, that's okay. And so I just went out on my own and found somebody to make them for me. And that was 2007. And it almost didn't happen a couple of times in 2007 in the beginning, but persevered and stuck it out, and been at it for 13 years now.
Well, and sort of to piggyback on the conversation we had before we start talking about your wheels specifically, it's just that kind of that desire to do something just a little bit differently. And then I'll weave that into the style of your wheels. And that's what I do appreciate about the style of your wheels, is that much like a 69 Camaro, you can throw a 5-spoke on just about anything and have a classic design. But I really appreciate it. Some of my long time favorites have always been the Rated X, Whiplash. This is kind of a 7-spoke design. And from designer to the designer, again, I always appreciate someone who's willing to just, hey, let's try something a little bit differently. And
Thanks.
even down to, Jason or CARRGUY, I will say, just showed the, the finish options, even like smoked titanium. You could probably actually paint it pink, but if you told me it was smoked, just the name smoked titanium sounds so sexy. It's like, yeah, that's the box I'm checking if I could afford that. But, yeah, so talk about maybe some of your design inspirations when it comes time to put a new set out. Is it just a byproduct of, from car rendering after car rendering, you start to be like, hey, it'd look really good on this car? Is it more car first, or have you come up with wheel designs, just thinking in a vacuum, wheel design first?
It actually goes back to what I was saying about looking at other cars and looking outside of the hot rod industry. And as the pro touring thing was coming on strong in the early 2000s and late 90s, all that was available from the typical hot rod wheel companies was polished 5-spokes. And I would look at European cars, and they would have 6, 7, 8, 10 spokes in all sorts of different finishes. And it always seemed to me that's more pro touring than polished 5-spokes. And there's a lot of people, probably the vast majority, that you'll never talk out of polished 5-spokes. And that's great. I've got wheels for them too. I couldn't turn my back on them, but I wanted something weird. I wanted to make those 5-spoke guys uncomfortable a little bit, and make the guys that were already thinking out of the box and looking to the European companies see that there was something for them, for their hot rods, from a guy that spoke hot rod, and didn't have to convert offsets and into backspacing and millimeters into inches, and try to call someplace like HRE and tell them they needed a fitment for a 69 Camaro, and have the guy on the other end say, what? And so I took my influences from all the European cars and the tuner cars and all of that stuff, that their aftermarket suppliers, and the OE stuff. The Whiplash actually came from an Audi wheel I saw, and like on a S4, and just thinking about just different looks, more aggressive sports car looks rather than typical 5-spoke hot rod traditional looks.
Well, I know every time I see the Black Widow wheel, I always, instantly picture that, like a 14-inch Mini Cooper wheel.
Yeah.
It looks very, I can see the British style. At least that's what I see when I see that.
That's exactly what it's based on.
And that taper, though, like instead of it being a rounded, I mean, that nice beveled edge is, well, I mean, that's what my wedding band is cool. Exactly that. But sorry, Jason, or old car guy, to cut you off.
Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for catching that. It's always nice when another designer sees what you did and appreciates it. So thank you for that.
So this is the part of the show where we're just basically going to start asking some of the questions, or asking the chat to provide some questions. And I know there's been a few of them in there already, and one of them comes from our friend from Down Under. His name is Jason as well. He was our guest a little while ago. I guess it was last week, wasn't it? And his question was, have you ever designed an Australian muscle car or sent wheels to Australia?
I've sent a lot of wheels to Australia. Lots, but I've never gotten to design an Australian model, and I love the Holdens, and I'm grateful to Holden for what they've done for us. The GTO and the G8 and the SS, and frankly, I'm kind of pissed at GM for waiting as long as they did to borrow those cars for us, because Australia has been getting better cars than us for years, and I'm really upset about not being offered a wagon in the G8 or the SS, because you can get them, or you could get them in Australia as wagons, and I'll hold that grudge for a long time. And I would own an SS wagon if they had made one, but right-hand drive won't work here, and you can't import anything that new anyways.
And one other question that Jason had asked us earlier on in the chat was, have you ever designed any Mazdas? He's a big Mazda fan over there in Australia.
I haven't, but operators are standing by. I've drawn way stranger things for money, so I can make it work. No problem.
Well, let's pivot right off of that. When you say operators standing by, what if someone in the chat wants to order a set of wheels? I mean, I know you say anything from probably 17s to I think 20s or 22s 24. And up to 24.
Yeah.
What's the best way, to start that process? What's the best way for someone to reach out to you to initiate that process?
Go on the website and fill out the contact form, or drop us an email at info@rushforthwheels.com, or just go old-fashioned and pick up the phone. All the contact info is right there on the website.
Well, it sounds like someone's phone's dinging there already. See, they're after some wheel designs, right lickety split here. One of the things that we want to give you an opportunity to chat about is you are on Instagram, because I found you over there the other day. And if you want to just kind of give yourself a little plug there for Instagram, you share a lot of good pictures over there as well.
Yeah, the Instagram has way more pictures than the website, and it's Rushforth_wheels at Instagram, and Rushforth Wheels on Facebook as well.
So, Jason, one of the normal things about our show format, the way Car Guy, Jason, and I kind of founded this live stream was to help to grow automotive niche YouTubers, people doing the same thing that we're doing here on the YouTube platform. And so we have always built into our show like a little segment to we call it growth hacks or lessons learned. And I know you're not on YouTube, but so I guess the way we'll frame the question for you, having to start your own business from scratch, what's a lesson learned, as you're building a brand, as you're building Rushforth Wheels or Rushforth Design, as you look back on what's been a really, pretty bountiful career for you, what are some of the things that you wished you would have learned or known sooner?
How to build a website, and how to edit videos for YouTube and start a YouTube channel. I think those three things are huge, and I would be way bigger if I had done that. I love YouTube, and it's incredible as a platform, and people don't realize it's the second biggest search engine. And I'm embarrassed to say I don't have the YouTube presence I should.
Well, this is where the community that Jason and I have built becomes really awesome and something we can leverage. You know, as we were talking off air, we just interviewed someone in your backyard in Tacoma, Washington, 3 episodes. So we can definitely put you in touch with Nate, super nice guy. I'm sure he could, put you at ease some on how to get your feet wet on the YouTube platform. But the other thing is, I mean, if you want to, Jason and I, we're more than happy to, if you want us to come shoot some really awesome wheels in pro touring hot rods. I mean, I don't think either of us would turn the opportunity down too, but
trade out for some Fairmont and Cordoba wheels.
Yeah, hey, right. I'm still stuck on some 20-year-old American racing wheels on this thing here, so
we gotta fix that.
we gotta fix that one right up. So, this obviously that opportunity would have to come post COVID-19 because I'm not allowed to travel into the States right now, but and it's not because of my criminal record. But anyways, we're gonna move on to this next segment of the show. We did open it up for some questions, and it doesn't look like there's too many more in there coming from the chat. But we also like to take an opportunity to give each other a little bit of what's up and coming on our own YouTube channel, so that our guests so that our people who are watching the show will know what's coming up on the CarrGuy, the old CarrGuy and Straight SIXFAN. So Grant, what do you got coming up on your channel in some upcoming episodes? Can't even talk.
It's a broken record here. Still trying to get that first start for the, but I really think we're gonna get that this weekend. So if not, you'll probably see me trying to attempt to TIG weld some exhausts for the first time. So one of those two things will probably happen. But CarrGuy, before you dip into it, I guess we'll let our guest Jason. Anything? Let me see you project forward a little bit with Rushforth wheels. Any new designs coming out in the next year or so, or?
Yeah, for sure, something in the next year. There's a couple new designs that I haven't gotten on the website yet. There again, learning website building. That's my best advice for up and coming entrepreneurs. And just keep building the brand and putting wheels on cool cars. And keep growing.
Yeah, and so on my channel too, we've got the next episode coming up is going to be a sponsored video. That's something I've been looking forward to for a really long time. I managed to reach out to a great company out there who has done a sponsorship actually on the Chrysler Cordoba. So you guys are going to get to see that video really, really quick coming up on Friday evening. So stay tuned for that.
Well, Jason, as you talked about, kind of self-admittingly, maybe you're behind the YouTube 8-ball. The other thing I'll say about YouTube is it's kind of, if you were going to build a brand or a business, it's almost like reverse marketing, right? You have the opportunity, like Jason or CarrGuy or I can kind of build a brand. And then eventually, if we figure out something really, what's the word, innovative to sell, we could sell a product, and you've already built a fan base.
Sure.
So, it's kind of is free marketing, but I guess what I'll say, for maybe it's more of advice than a question, but honestly, Jason or I would be more than happy to reach out and answer any questions you might have about getting started in YouTube. I mean, really, we tell our followers or the people in the chat, because a lot of people are worried about the first video being perfect. It's like, no, like the first video is supposed to be the one that you set the bar so low you don't want to stub your toe on your way over it the next time. So, So, I guess I'd like to encourage you, don't be afraid to get out there or even hire. There is a guy locally here in Kansas who he has an auto salvage yard, and when he started, he did hire like a professional media marketing. They have these high dollar cameras, very cinematic shots, and it really helped like build his credibility out of the gate. But then that guy flaked out on him. So he had this like he kind of built this thing, but it was still early enough. He was under, probably up to about 500 subscribers, and then he took over from there. And, since it's been 100% Chad now, even just shooting from his iPhone, he's built that to quadruple that in probably half the time, and it's through networking with people like CarrGuy and myself. So I guess I don't know. I'm rambling on, but don't be afraid to dip your toe in the YouTube thing, I guess, is what I'd say.
Nice. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's definitely a whole new world, and it's one of the reasons why I started with a YouTube channel. I've got a used car lot, so I said, well, what better way to kind of show people behind the scenes of what the used car industry is doing, and that's kind of how I branded myself. My company name is Old Car Auto Sales, and so I went with that with the whole YouTube thing. So we just tend to roll on that, create that brand, build ourselves, a bigger audience, no matter what it happens to be, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Even the local papers are out there with our brand on it. So that's part of the thing that we're trying to do is with this show is to help some up and coming YouTubers kind of follow in our footsteps or learn from our mistakes. Maybe is more like it, because we've had plenty of those. But anyways, having said all that, I'll say the same thing. We encourage you to, if you're thinking about YouTube, to do it, because it's a really fun process, and it's something that definitely can open up other venues or horizons for any company of whatever it is you're branding. At this point in time, Jason, we want to thank you for being a part of the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show, and taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you running a business and all that with a family and all the things that you do in between it keeps a person busy. I know from experience myself. So thank you on behalf of Grant and the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show for being a part of the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, guys. And your time zones are a lot later than mine, so you guys are out more.
Yeah, and right at 5 in the Pacific time zone isn't the easiest time to jump on a call either. So we appreciate that either.
I appreciate you guys inviting me, and it was a pleasure.
Now, I will say I'm going to try to sneak one last question in that came in from the chat before we close it out here. It comes from Car Craftsman, and I believe, I don't know a lot about his channel. I'm not 100% familiar, but I saw him mention something earlier about how he designs graphics for cars. So I feel like he's coming at this from a fellow designer perspective. But he asked, what's some of Jason's favorite things to incorporate in a paint job, whether that be shapes or any other thing?
That's a great question. And my best advice for the entire car, including the paint job especially, is keep it simple. You can do a lot of refinement to a car without going crazy. Think of, like a custom car. When you take stuff away, it looks better than when you add stuff. Think of the super crazy 50s customs where they would just scab on crap from 20 different models, and it hurts to look at. But things like the Hirohata Merc, where they just added Buick trim and got rid of most everything else, the car's timeless. It's in the Peterson Museum. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. I think Chip Foose and I pretty much ruined two-tones for the next long while. So as much as they complement a car, and especially when you just run along the body line just right, I think it's been done to death as of late. So some of the things I like to do are kind of go back to factory stripes. The 60s factory stripes are pretty neat, and like Mopar and like this Camaro hockey stick stripe. Not just another set of SS stripes over the nose and the trunk, but give it a little more thought and a little more style, and don't be afraid to do something that hasn't been done.
Yeah, I mean, as the resident Ford guy, I'll be the first to submit the Starsky and Hutch stripe still drives me nuts. It's just not a very well done. It's just so bad.
Well, that's not half as offensive as all the things that have received Shelby stripes. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you could buy a 4-cylinder Mustang with Shelby stripes. It's done. Stop. Just stop.
Yeah, coining the phrase "less is more" means so much when it
Yes.
comes to custom designing a car, for sure.
Yeah, when you look at the second generation Ford GT, the 04, 05, 06, some of the prettiest ones are the ones where they opted out of having the stripes, the striped elite ones, and they're some of the most valuable ones other than the Gulf colored ones. They just look so refined and so clean. I'm not saying don't put stripes on your car, but don't put the same stripes on your car, please.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so we will probably, we want to give everybody the rest of their evening. So we appreciate your time, Jason. And
Absolutely.
as I close it out, I do regret a little bit that we didn't bring up Boyd Coddington really in much of any capacity, because I know he's a big influence for you. And but thanks again for your time, and being willing to break the mold out there in the forged wheel business, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks a lot, you guys. Back at you, and thank you for your time and for having me as a guest.
And on that note, guys, thanks for joining us in the chat. Thanks for taking some time out of your Thursday evening to be a part of the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show. We're going to close this one out next week. Don't forget, we're back over on Straight SIXFAN's channel for another guest over there. Are we at a guest next week? We are, aren't we?
We do. I do need to confirm that they're still in, but
there you go. So we've got another guest coming up next week, hopefully, and that's over on Grant's channel. So guys, stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. We will see you guys